The Material Safety Data Sheet, commonly called the MSDS, is a component of your university's chemical hygiene plan and hazard communication program. The MSDS contains information provided by the chemical manufacturer and is maintained by the university to inform students and staff of the possible hazards associated with chemicals being used in their laboratory or work area. It is a critical part of any laboratory safety program. The goal of the MSDS is to provide you with a summarized, multi-source resource that informs you of certain basic but necessary pieces of information regarding the substance or chemical you are about to use. The MSDS informs you about the material's physical properties and related health effects, personal protective equipment necessary to protect you, first aid treatment necessary in the event of an exposure, how to respond to accidents, and the planning that may be necessary in order to safely handle a spill. The MSDS may vary in style and content, but all contain certain required sections. State and federal law requires that all manufacturers and distributors of chemical products provide the end user with a manufacturer-specific MSDS. What is a material safety data sheet? The MSDS is a widely used system for cataloging information on chemicals, chemical compounds, and chemical mixtures. MSDS information may include instructions for the safe use and potential hazards associated with a particular material or product. MSDS can be found anywhere chemicals are being used. There is also a duty to properly label substances on the basis of physicochemical, health, and/or environmental risk. Labels can include hazard symbols, such as the European Union standard black diagonal cross on an orange background, used to denote a harmful substance. The goal of the MSDS is to provide the user with a summarized, multi-source resource that informs the user of certain basic but necessary pieces of information regarding the substance they are about to use. The MSDS informs the user about the material's physical properties and related health effects, personal protective equipment necessary to protect the user, first aid treatment necessary in the event of an exposure, how to respond to accidents, and the planning that may be necessary in order to safely handle a spill. Each company can design its own MSDS form, and the sections may be in different order, but the basic kinds of information on any MSDS will be the same. This is an example of the first page of an MSDS. For example, there is always a section that lists the identity of the substance or the chemical name on the label, date the MSDS was prepared, the name and address of the manufacturer, and usually a phone number for emergencies and more information. The section on hazardous ingredients and chemical identity includes names of substances in the chemical that might be dangerous and safe exposure limits such as permissible exposure limit, or PEL, as set by OSHA, or the threshold limit value, or TLV. This section also lists common names for the chemical. The section on physical characteristics describes many physical qualities of the chemical and lets you know what is usual or safe. For example, it may state how the chemical looks and smells, boiling and melting temperatures. This is important in case a chemical might become a gas you could breathe. Evaporation rate, how easily the chemical dissolves, and how heavy it is. This tells you if it will sink, float, or dissolve in water. The section with fire and explosion data provides information on the lowest temperature when the chemical could catch fire, or flash point. It also contains flammability data that lets you know if it's flammable, if it catches fire below 100 degrees Fahrenheit, is combustible, or if it catches fire above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. In addition, this section lists the best way to put out a fire involving that chemical. The section on reactivity describes what happens if this chemical comes in contact with air, water, or other chemicals. It also describes conditions like heat or materials that can cause the chemical to react by burning, exploding, or releasing dangerous vapors. The chemical is called incompatible or unstable with these conditions or substances. For example, sodium metal is unstable when it comes in contact with water. It explodes. This section on health hazards lists ways the chemical might enter your body, like splashing on your skin or being breathed in as vapor. It will also list possible symptoms of overexposure. This section will provide information about how overexposure might make existing medical conditions worse, and it describes emergency first aid procedures. The section on usage, handling, and storage describes how to clean up an accidental spill, leak, or release. This part will include any special procedures that might be required for cleanup. It will provide you with information on how to handle, store, and dispose of chemicals safely. Remember, if there is an accident, you must notify your laboratory instructor or professor immediately. You may take care of it yourself only if you are trained to do so and are wearing the proper personal protective equipment. This section explains special personal protective equipment to use when working with the chemical. It also describes requirements for special procedures, extra health or safety information, signs that should be posted, and other information not covered in other sections. It is wise to study MSDSs for any chemicals you will work with in your university laboratory. MSDSs for many chemical substances are not primarily intended for use by the general consumer. Material safety data sheets focus on the hazards of working with the material in an occupational setting. For example, an MSDS for a cleaning solution is not highly pertinent to someone who uses a can of the cleaner once a year, but they are extremely important to someone who works with a cleaner or a chemical in a confined space for 40 hours a week. In this program, we have covered major sections of the Material Safety Data Sheet, or MSDS. We have discussed components of the MSDS that informs you about a chemical or material's physical properties and related health effects, personal protective equipment necessary to protect you, first aid treatment necessary in the event of an exposure, how to respond to accidents, and the planning that may be necessary in order to safely handle a spill. We have covered the MSDS and how you can use information contained in them to stay safe and healthy in your learning environment. If you have any questions, contact your safety department.